What you're about to hear is an excerpt from episode 4 of the podcast Post Weird, a conversation show between two friends about our increasingly dystopian future and the pop culture that's getting us through it. If you like what you hear, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at @postweird_. Thank you for listening.
Yo, man, your Jordans are fucked up.
So with all the Spider-Man news dropping this week, I've been wanting to kind of play a game on the pod. I've thought a lot about like some fan casting stuff and other things that would be fun to talk about, as we're not getting the movies themselves at this point, and so everything's so delayed. So we really need to kind of use our imagination to imagine what these properties might end up being, when we might be able to see them, etc. And so specifically in regards to Spider-Man, it felt like a great time to reevaluate the different parts of the Spider-Man iterations that have existed recently, and try to piece together our own versions that we would want to see on screen. So what we're going to do is we have 5 categories. I'm going to explain each of the categories. Steve and I are going to pick in each of these categories based on what would basically be the core Spider-Man text of this time. So of course we have the 3 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. We have the 2 Mark Webb Amazing Spider-Man movies. We have the MCU Spider-Man. We have Into the Spider-Verse. We have Venom. We have the 2018 Spider-Man video game. And if we really want to stretch it, we've got the cartoon, the Spider-Man animated series that have run throughout this timeline as well. We did decide on no comic iterations because there's just too many to talk about. But let's get into the categories. The first one would be the hero. Basically, select your iteration of Spider-Man. Pretty straightforward, with the twist that you could pick a Spider-Person in the specific case of Into the Spider-Verse. So really just select the hero of your movie. Second one, as a counter to that, select your villain. Again, straightforward. What villain would you like to see fight your hero? Pick them from any of the movies, the animated movie, Venom, etc. The relationship. This one is a little bit more complex. I didn't want to just pick the female lead. Like, there's a lot of really important relationships to Spider-Man that go beyond just, is he in love with Mary Jane? Is he in love with Gwen Stacy? Whatever. Other important relationships are, his relationship with his aunt and uncle, his relationship with Harry and the Osborns. So the relationship is like, what is the emotional arc of your movie? The next category is the chaos agent. Basically, who's the foil for your hero? Doesn't necessarily have to be a villain, doesn't necessarily have to be a friend. Some of the best Spider-Man characters are both at different points. That could also be a Harry Osborn, that could be a Black Cat, that could be Deadpool, any number of things. And then the last one is just the vibes. You've got to have a genre for the vibes. You've got to have a genre for your movie. And so we'll basically select the vibe from an already existing movie that we want to add to our property. So just for example, the typical hero's arc in Spider-Man 2 of the Raimi films, or the kind of romance drama that's present in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Let's pick a vibe to kind of tie it all together. And then we're going to have people vote on which one they'd rather see. That was a lot, Steve.
That's a lot. That was a lot, but I know who I'm standing with. I want to hear who you standing with. Who you picking? Who's your guy?
Is there anything, first of all, that I should clarify before we get into this, or you think that it's pretty well understood?
I think it's understood.
All right, you go first.
Oh, you want me to go first?
I'm putting it on you. We'll go back and forth, starting with the hero.
I know who my hero is. I know who my hero is. My hero is Peter Parker, played by Neil Patrick Harris.
From the animated series.
I'm lying. It's Tobey Maguire.
Because he was the voice.
No, I know he was. I
was like, wow, that was a curveball.
That was a curveball. No one expected that. It's Tobey Maguire, the GOAT. Put respect on his names. Go see the movie Brothers. Shout out to Toby. I respect you, even though you got a weird baby face.
So why, in your opinion, is he the best iteration of Spider-Man as a hero?
I think because currently for me, we're going through a dark timeline, and I need a reminder of hope. And his Peter, as much as that movie is weird, Fucking, you got Randy Savage is in there, and it's just awkward. But Tobey Maguire really encompasses what the feeling of hope is for me in those films. Mine is Spider-Man 3. But like Spider-Man 1 and 2, he's just trying to do right by the people around him. He's just trying to do right by his family, and he's trying to exist in his own life. And in that, I still feel that. I still feel that moment when he puts the suit down in Spider-Man 2, and he's like, he just wants to go live his life. Mm-hmm. All of us feel that. All of us feel morally that we know sometimes what the right thing to do is, and it's too much work. You just want to go live your life and be a hoe. We all feel that. We all feel that. And I'm always going to ride with Tobey Maguire. I think Andrew Garfield was just a little, for me, was just a little too cool. Not necessarily Peter Parker. And Tom Holland is too much of finding himself because he's still kind of cool. But he's like cool now, whatever the kid's version of cool is. And he's finding himself. But I don't know where Tom Holland's going to end up. Maybe 10 years from now, he might still be Peter Parker. And we see him as an adult.
Age, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. But right now, he's still a kid. And I feel like Tobey Maguire really encompasses, as Peter Parker, really encompasses what it means to have hope and to do right by your family and your friends and the city.
That is a really, really good explanation. And now I feel like I should have picked that.
You should have, man.
Because that you really nailed it. I mean, the connection that those movies have to New York and just to the superhero story, I think, are still some of the best superhero movies ever made. So I respect the pick. I can't disagree with that. For my hero, I'm going to be selecting Jake Johnson's Peter B. Parker from Into the Spider-Verse.
Ooh, that's not bad. That's not bad.
Jake Johnson, okay. Post-Weird Hall of Fame member. Get on the pod.
Get on the pod, man. Get on the pod, man.
But I think actually what you were hitting on with Tom Holland being able to play Spider-Man for a longer period of time and we actually see him age. One of the reasons why I wanted to pick Peter B. Parker is because I want to see an adult Spider-Man. I mean, I know that so much of the core Spider-Man text in the mainstream is him as a teenager, and I get why that's so appealing and why that has such a large audience. But there is a deep history of Spider-Man aging, being an adult, having a job, being like owning his own company, getting married, even though they undo that in the comics. But like, there's a long history of him actually being an adult. And so just for my iteration of this, I would love to see a Spider-Man that actually represents me at this point in my life more as an adult.
Yeah.
And to me, that Jake Johnson captures that with Peter B. Parker. He's kind of worn out on the world. He's kind of, I mean, he's taken some hits, but he's still going. He's still a hero. That's what I wanted to capture. That's why I'm picking that iteration. I just love the Into the Spider-Verse movie.
I think Jake Johnson is a pretty good Peter Parker. You know, I don't think about him enough, but you're right. He does have the thing of like, oh, you keep going even though those hits have just keep hitting you.
Yeah. I mean, really, Peter B. Parker, I mean, I know that in Into the Spider-Verse, the Spider-Man that actually dies kind of seems like it's an analog for Tobey Maguire, but I actually think that there's a good argument that like Tobey Maguire could have turned into Jake Johnson's version. As like Peter B. Parker is like Tobey Maguire after he's already been Spider-Man for 10 years and is like, yeah, man, fuck this. Like, I'm getting beat up for no reason. These people don't even love me that much anymore. What am I supposed to be doing?
I don't want to have a kid right now. That's weird.
So that's my pick. Let's move on to the villain category. Steve, you're up.
I want you to put respect on this man's name. There's no actor that you will ever say who can sometimes portray himself as Spanish, Italian, Guatemalan, black. His name is Alfred Molina, and he played Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2. Let's go look at his catalog. He's all over the place when it comes to his race. And I think
the good old Al Pacino.
Yeah, good old Al Pacino. Just like, what is he? He's Cuban. He's white.
It's whatever he needs to be for the part, baby.
Whatever he needs to be a black woman. He could do it too. Whatever, man. It is what it is. I'm going Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. I want him. I don't think there's anyone else villain-wise who's ever been as captivating, as heartfelt when he killed his wife in Spider-Man 2. I felt that, even though it was fucking ridiculous. Why are we doing this in such a small place? Why is any of this happening? Why can't we do this in, like, you know, outside? But whatever, Alfred Molina. I fuck with you no matter what happens.
I think that's a great pick. I actually was selecting between two, And I really almost picked that one because I do actually think that he's probably the best on-screen villain for Spider-Man. I mean, the opening shot of him basically waking up after the accident in the hospital room where
Terrifying.
he takes out all those people, that's the scariest the Spider-Man movie has been. I mean, that's Sam Raimi at like his best.
Yeah, he was killing it. I loved it. I loved every moment of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't argue with that one. Spider-Man 2 still probably stands the test of time better than almost any other superhero movie from that era, in my opinion. That's the one. Do you think that's better than the first one?
I think the first one there's moments in the first one that make me remember it more fondly than Spider-Man 2. Like, Bonesaw is ready. It's so bad. And I think about it at least once a day. Like, damn, Peter Parker was fighting this dude and fuck, and then he killed, oh my God, Peter, you killed Uncle Ben. Peter, what are you doing? I can't even tell you who Uncle Ben was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about this dude. Andrew Garble, you garbage ass actor.
All right, for my villain, I'm gonna take, and I know that this movie everyone didn't love it, even though it made a ton of money. But I'm gonna explain why I feel like it's a good villain for Peter B. Parker to take on. I'm taking Tom Hardy's Venom, because I think if you're gonna have a more middle-aged Spider-Man fight a villain, there's no villain better than Venom to get under the skin of that character. Venom feeds off of, your insecurities, your failings, your all of these stuff, all of these things that make you want to basically seize power and live your life in a more controlled sense. Like, basically, the symbionte feeds off of that need for control. And to me, that is a great villain for Peter B. Parker to fight. And while I don't necessarily love the Venom movie, Tom Hardy is a really interesting actor, and I do one day want to see that Venom villain actually cross over in a fight with some iteration of Spider-Man.
It should be Tobey Maguire.
I mean, that's for the purposes of this, you didn't pick Venom, so...
My bad. I'm sorry, I'm just hating outside because you picked Tom Hardy.
I mean, what issues did you have with that movie? I mean, I had my own issues, but like... Would you rather I have gone with the dude from That's Topher Grace Venom? Because I'm not picking Topher Grace Venom.
No, don't shit on Topher Grace. My beef was I actually really enjoy the Venom movie. It's hard to sell to people because it's like it feels almost like ripped out of. Because I was going to movies as a kid, I was going to movies as a teenager, so it feels completely ripped out of like 2006.
It does.
Came out 2018, 2017. This movie feels completely like even the beats, like our beats have like the more we've matured as adults, movies have also made their beats go a little faster, a little more nuanced, a little less obvious. This movie is like it's got a beginning, it's got a middle, and it's got an end act. The end act is garbage, but I still really enjoyed it. I just think I don't know, Tom Hardy as Venom just I don't know. I just want Topher Grace, man.
I'm not picking Topher Grace over Tom Hardy.
Topher Grace, I love you, man. Even though I heard you were a dick to all your cast members.
I'm taking Tom Hardy as Venom in that category. So far, we've got Stevens, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man going up against Alfred Molina, Doc Ock, and I've got Peter B. Parker from Into the Spider-Verse going up against Tom Hardy's Venom from the movie Venom. Next category is the relationship. Now, this is an odd one. It's a little bit add some complexity to the movie rather than just the fight. What relationship to you is really important for Spider-Man?
I don't want to have like a very strong Mary Jane aspect. I want Mary Jane in my movie, but I don't want it to be like I don't want to be like a romedy. I want it to be him and Mary Jane broke up, but they're talking again, and it's gonna go back together. And they're okay. They're taking their time with it. I want it to be Aunt May is getting much older because he's an older Peter Parker, and she's worried that she hasn't given Peter all that he needs, as she's about to die. She's not gonna die. She's just older. She's just like, oh, I'm worried. Is he ready for the world without me? Is he ready for this? And I also want it to be Peter is training Miles Morales. I haven't decided who the cast him is yet. Let's just pull him from Spider-Verse. But he doesn't know how to let him take lead because he's been Spider-Man alone for such a long time.
That's a good pick. That actually sounds a lot like the video game iteration, although I think that Aunt May has some comparisons to, previous Aunt Mays as well. I'll put you down as the Aunt May relationship, because I think that's really, really important, because that's the figure that's in Peter's life. I mean, although the death of Uncle Ben kicks so much stuff off, Aunt May is the one that's there for him. So I think that's a really good pick.
I think the death of Aunt May, whenever it happens in whatever media, is so much more impactful, because that's Uncle Ben is what starts it, but losing Aunt May is like losing a piece of yourself at this point, because the memory of Uncle Ben will be much longer than when you had Uncle Ben with you for Peter. But losing Aunt May at 30 something, oof, man, that's painful.
So which, just for the sake of the game, from which property Aunt May should I put down for you?
Okay, Sally Field.
I respect that.
I just want to see Sally. I just want Sally Field. She's a great actor. I don't know if the original May from the Raimi films is alive.
I really don't know.
Shout to you if you are. Shout to you if you're alive, yo. You doing crazy.
All right, mine. It's funny that you say you wanted Mary Jane kind of as a side character, because I actually am going to pick Mary Jane, the version from the Spider-Man video game from 2018, the Insomniac game. I want intrepid reporter and very capable Mary Jane. I just feel like
capable.
That is going to create an interesting balance that's usually not seen in the Spider-Man movies, where like it's usually, while Peter Parker needs Mary Jane from an emotional standpoint, she always needs him from a strength standpoint. Like, it's very much still like he's saving her. And I thought it'd be really interesting, since I'm picking Peter B. Parker, Spider-Man that might be a little less competent and a little bit more burnt out. That'd be interesting to actually have a Mary Jane that is very, very capable to actually play as a foil to his sort of like not necessarily having his shit together.
Yeah.
I felt like that would create a pretty good relationship. I think while there's been some interesting takes on Mary Jane, I'm not sure if we've ever really got the movie version of her actually being like a fully fleshed out character. And I like the video game version for that reason.
Yeah, I was hit or miss with the video game version, just because I'm like, man, I'm here for Spider-Man. I would love this to just be in like cutscenes, but I do really appreciate that she's like an actual person rather than just love interest who's damsel in distress.
Yeah, I didn't want to just pick a love interest.
That gets tired. Nobody wants to be Lois Lane. Even though they make Lois Lane seem so much cooler than she is, she still always is, come save me. But yeah, I fuck with you. I see what you're doing there.
All right. I appreciate it. We're going to move on to, I think, what's probably my favorite category, which is the Chaos Agent.
Chaos.
Yeah. This, again, is just someone who is just makes Peter Parker's life harder. Maybe as a friend, maybe as a villain. Who'd you pick for this one?
Hey, shout out to all my millennials who can identify with this. You know who's the chaos in your life? It's you. I picked Peter Parker as the chaos in his life because he can't get it together. He's trying to do so many things at once. He's trying to mentor Miles. He's trying to still be a good what is he to Aunt May? What's Aunt nephew? Be a good nephew to be a good nephew to Aunt May. Nephew? I forget it all the time. Sorry, you know what a niece is? I don't know what that is. He's trying to be a good nephew to Aunt May, and he's also still trying to see where this MJ thing is gonna go. But because of his constant work, he has to always be outside.
So basically, you're putting Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 1 as your hero. And then as your Chaos Agent, you're putting in Tobey Maguire from Spider-Man 3, yes. Who just fucks everything up.
Just like, you'll break up for no reason.
That is a great take, and I appreciate you just taking my game and breaking it.
I'm breaking it.
By picking the same person again.
I would do it 100
times. But I
times.
actually respect the fact that you're just like, oh yeah, Peter Parker is sometimes his own worst
He's his
enemy.
own worst. Because I could have did Sinister Six. I could have did anything that would have caused chaos, but I'm like, I'm here for like a good time, man. I want to feel stuff here. It's Tobey Maguire. If they could push this movie out tomorrow.
You're
I
just
need this movie to
doubling
save my
down
life.
on Tobey Maguire.
I'm gonna double down on Tobey Maguire for the rest of my life. It's go see Brothers, huh? What's wrong with you? Come on, man.
For my Chaos Agent, I'm gonna pick someone very close to my 12-year-old heart. I'm gonna pick the Black Cat, and
Okay.
I'm gonna pick the Felicity Jones version from Amazing Spider-Man, who never got to be Black Cat because they never made a sequel.
She had 4 lines.
I'm picking Felicity Jones because
All
there
right.
was so much potential. I was like excited about that casting. She's a good actress. She's been in good stuff. And I always wanted to see an actual live action version of the Black Cat that's not ridiculous. The cartoon version has a way of making her pretty ridiculous. It's basically bank robber with boobs, which is just not, I mean, you know.
That's not your thing.
I mean,
You're not
as an enlightened adult, I'm trying to be like,
yeah,
okay,
I would never like boobs.
she
would
should
never like
be
that.
she should be more than this. And I felt like that would have been a great opportunity to bring her in a modern sense in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and it just never happened. So a weird pick, I feel like, for this one, but I love her and Spider-Man's relationship because she's often antagonizing him, but they actually have pretty deep feelings for each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like a Peter B. Parker who's maybe going through a midlife crisis, who's being antagonized by the Black Cat, would have some interesting thoughts. And what I'm really trying to set up is a weird relationship dynamic for Jake Johnson to work with. Because I feel like he's very funny, too.
Yeah.
And so I want to see the sort of like rom-com version of middle-aged Spider-Man being accosted by 2 women that are like very much more capable than he is at this point. And that's what I'm going for.
Okay, I see what you're doing. I also want to tell you, every time you say Peter B. Parker, it sounds like you trying to rap. It sounds like a rap name to me. I don't know, like Peter B. Blazin. Like, what? Okay, yeah, Parker. Yeah, I got you. I'm riding though. I'm here with it.
All right. So last category, Steven. This is just called the vibes. What vibe that's been present in a Spider-Man movie do you want to be front and center for this on-screen version for you?
You're not gonna respect this. I'm gonna call it the vibes for this one. If you need to know what the film is, it's Spider-Man 3. Hold on. My thought is it's like a kettle on the stove. It's gonna bubble up at some point. Is somebody gonna handle it, or are we gonna have a fire on our hands? Spider-Man 3.
So it's what I'm seeing is basically Tobey Maguire Spider-Man dealing with his demons, fighting Doc Ock, and there's it's kind of a dark movie. Is this like a mature Spider-Man?
It's a mature Spider-Man. He's no longer just like a little kid. He might have lost a little bit of his like lust for life. He's no longer as so quippy. He's just like, I'm gonna come here, fuck you up, and go home. But he's also trying to raise Miles Morales to be the next him because he's getting older. You remember when we read the life stories kind of thing? I want something like that. I want
Great comic. Yeah.
That's fantastic. For any of you out there who like to pick up paperbacks, the life story of Spider-Man is fantastic read. It'll make you cry. But that's what I want. I want him to just... I want the story to be like, oh, old man Peter, not old, but like in 40-something,
Yeah.
just is like tired and struggling to understand what it means to still be good in a world that isn't good, because he's got, what, 30 years at this point of being better than the people he's facing, and life hasn't worked out for him. He still hasn't really gotten the girl. His life is he's still more or less poor, still more or less struggling, and I want to see what kind of man that is. That's what I want. And I feel like the kettle on the stove is like they're just going to start, and at the end of the movie is just going to boil over with everything that's been faced in front of you. His interaction with Miles. I actually want him in my head. I want him and Miles to have like a fight, and Miles to fuck him up, because that's what's supposed to happen. I want him and Miles to have a fight. I want him to have a fight with Aunt May. Not just like, oh, I'm angry and I step. I want them to sit in it. I hate when movies do this thing where they have an argument and then the person storms off because we need to get to the next scene. I think it's pointless. Sit in that rage. And maybe him and MJ have a fight. I don't know. I don't really necessarily care about her character.
You're meshing together a lot of the good parts of the Raimi movies, I think, because there's some good emotional moments with that Aunt May as well. You have Sally Field as your Aunt May, but I like still those moments I think exist there. And so I feel like you're piecing together a lot of what could have made the Raimi movies really special had they not thrown so many villains into that third movie.
You know where my heart is, man. My
I
heart is
know.
always with.
I shouldn't be
there.
surprised.
My heart's always gonna be with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, even though Harry Osborn's trash, MJ's kind of trash. I'm always gonna ride with. I got the responsibility thing. Always gets me. Always gets me, man.
All right, for my vibes, I'm picking the most recent Spider-Man Far From Home, because the vibes from that I want are the rom-com elements of that movie. Of course, my movie does not feature them as teenagers, but what I really want is Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker, just chopping it up with MJ and Black Cat and fighting Tom Hardy as Venom. And I want this to be a romantic comedy where Jake Johnson's Peter Parker is able to find himself through this sort of situations that he gets himself in with his relationship, with the Symbionite, and all of those different things. I want it to be sort of like a mature Spider-Man, but not in the darker way that your version is, but more in sort of a lighthearted way where he's really trying to deal with his shit in the type of way that male characters often are as in a romantic comedy.
Yeah.
And I want to see that version of Spider-Man because I always think don't get me wrong, I love the action, I love the villains. If you ask me what the most important parts of most superhero stories are, it's their relationship to the people that they love. I know that sounds cheesy and like a line of BS that Disney would sell you to sell tickets, but like honestly, superheroes are really nothing without the people that they save. And so I'm really interested in the relationship dynamics rather than let's put a bunch of villains into a movie and
Sell toys.
Yeah, and sell toys and put Peter Parker through a lot of pain. That always seems to be where the movies go. They get larger and larger and maybe more violent, and maybe the people he loves are in more danger, whatever. But I really want to dig down into those relationship elements of like, who is he as a man? That to me, that's interesting to look at as adults Peter Parker with a lot of responsibilities.
I think it's important. I would like to know who these characters are outside of the powers, because at this point, I've been Spider-Man fan for almost 20-something years in my life, and so I don't necessarily need to see the villain. I want to see a cool villain. I want to see a cool set piece of action, but I want to know how are he and Aunt May really doing? Like, we never get to see Aunt May sad. We never get to see her miss her husband. We never get to see her date. Like, I mean, I think in the comics she was dating Dr. Octopus.
Yeah, that happens.
But I want to see more stuff like that, because these are people. It's a person. I want to see how Peter's doing. How is he, I don't know, adjusting? In my story, I want to see how is he adjusting to being a mentor to someone else outside, because you see it in Spider-Verse, but it's always played for last, and it was more like, oh, Peter B. Parker just wants to have a kid, or he feels like, oh, I can actually be a father. I want to see the same thing on Tobey Maguire, man. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see. I want to see, can Tobey Maguire be a dad?
I respect that, and like I said, going back to just our discussions about the many iterations of Spider-Man that currently exist, one of my part of the thing that I have a little bit of trepidation about with the current MCU is I just don't know if they'll ever let Spider-Man age, like we were talking about Tom Holland aging. I'm so skeptical that we will ever get sort of an old man Spider-Man that would let Miles Morales enter the MCU live action universe, because he can't really, I mean, I guess they can do whatever they want, but like the teenage Spider-Man quota is being filled by Peter Parker. He's basically in Miles Morales' lane. And so until Tom Holland were to age into the part, it doesn't really make sense to like push him off to the side as an older Peter Parker. I'm just worried that the MCU will basically never let Spider-Man not be a teenager. That seems disappointing to me, because I would love to see the relationships that you're talking about as Peter Parker tries to be a mentor and tries to care for Aunt May as she gets older. I want to see those elements. I just feel like that might be too serious for
Yeah.
the MCU canon at this point.
I feel like with MCU, because we've had 2 iterations where they did somehow navigate darker storylines, what's going to happen is they're just going to sort of remove themselves. Like, we may never see an Uncle Ben. In my head, Tobey Maguire, the God, is Uncle Ben in the Tom Holland universe. And that's all I want. I just want to see him have that. Like, I want to see Tom Holland have the memory. It doesn't need to be like 20 minutes. It just needs to be Uncle Ben said this one thing at some point. It could be movie 4. I don't care. But I feel like they'll never let us actually have like a hard storyline, because ultimately all these storylines are just sort of immature. And
they're being made flexible, like we're saying about the multiverse stuff, which is awesome. But it also means that there's probably less time to be spent with just Tom Holland's Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Because if you make him share the screen with other Spider-Man, or you move him into a sort of live-action Spider-Verse, he's now a cast member rather than a lead. And so we might never actually sort of go into those emotional depths that we could get otherwise. That might be one of the downfalls of sort of expanding this. I'd be excited either way.
Yeah,
but
I'm buying a ticket no matter what happens.
So before we close here today, I'm just going to run back through our selections. We're going to put them up on our social media and have people vote on which one they'd rather see. For mine, again, I'll just run through it. I've got Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker as my hero. I love his iteration of aging Spider-Man. He's going to be going up against Tom Hardy as Venom. The crux relationship is going to be between Jake Johnson and the Mary Jane Watson from the 2008 video game. The Chaos Agent that I'm bringing in is Felicity Jones' Black Cat that she never got to play from Amazing Spider-Man. And the vibes are from Spider-Man Far From Home. I want to basically make it a romantic comedy that sort of gets into Peter Parker's relationships. Do you want to just run through yours real quick, Steve?
I'll run through mine real quick. You already know who it is. Steve, will he do it? The GOAT. That's one of my AKAs I'm working off of the pod. I picked Tobey Maguire because he reminds me what hope is. The villain would be Alfred Molina because he's a fantastic actor. The relationship would be when Aunt May is growing older and she's worried that she has not done enough to make Peter a good person. And Peter is also trying to navigate his relationship with Miles Morales as he's mentoring him, and rekindling a romance with MJ. And the chaos, as always, in Peter's life is Peter himself not knowing how to navigate the chaos of his life. And the vibes is Spider-Man 3, but better.
Spider-Man 3, but there's no weird dance number.
No,
Are you going to keep the emo hair?
Dance.
Oh, you're keeping the dance and the hair?
Can we have a quick moment? I went to the movie theater the day that movie came out. I was in the I got the perfect seat. I was in the middle row, in the middle. I was just there, and I was so fucking stoked. And halfway, I'm sitting there, man. I'm like, hey, but this is what's happening? Why is he dancing? Why are him and MJ's problems so important? Why did he hit MJ? What's going on here? Why is Harry just being a dick? You know where he live at. Go get him. Like what's happening here? Why is Gwen Stacy here? This doesn't make any sense. Topher Grace is not who I'd pick for Venom. But I don't know what's happening. It's just so much.
All right, thanks so much for listening. Again, we're gonna throw these picks up. Maybe if we like doing this, we'll do some more of this stuff in the future. We're gonna keep bringing you some current events, some pop culture news. Thanks so much for listening. Have a good one.